And we continue at 106 in the afternoon. Talk Radio 790 KABC, the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's in Culver City.
John, I've been doing some digging, and I'm not liking what I'm seeing. The Iris was built by a developer called Affirmed Housing that got funding from your tax dollars in the local city of L.A., the county, the state, and the federal government. And one of our friends might have been at the ribbon cutting.
There are so many incredible benefits to the community when we bring housing like the Iris online. It helps us provide housing at prices that are affordable to working families, and it provides us places for people who are exiting homelessness to go where they can receive services and get on the path to stability.
Or leave the Iris and go get a bunch of crack and try to rape an old woman.
Not you, Tracy. Well, I guess nobody's perfect.
The Iris. Completely funded by you, the residents of Los Angeles.
I love the fact that they build a building for a bunch of drugged out naked rapists, and they name it after one of the prettiest flowers out there.
I'll do some more digging, and I guarantee I won't like what I find.
Yeah, just find out what's going on at the Rose. 800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is a pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. She is an attorney with the California Justice Center, who you can follow on X at Hamill_law. Julie Hamill, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So thank you so much for stopping by. So I'll tell you, when President Trump was in town, right after the fires took place, and we had that raucous meeting with all of the homeowners who lost their homes or who were not allowed to go back to their homes because the neighborhood was essentially destroyed. And the mayor was there, and we had members of Congress who were there, and everyone showed up to this, all the electeds. And when President Trump was acting like an alderman, he was more concerned with making sure that people could get back in their homes than the local elected officials. But he was asking very pointed, very specific questions about dates because he didn't want this to take forever. He wants people to be able to rebuild, get back in their homes, get back to their normal lives. And, of course, when daddy's in town, everyone stands up straight and yes, sir, no, sir, answers the questions, including the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, who pledged to the president that the city of L.A. would not put up barriers to people moving back in or rebuilding, that we would make sure that we did everything possible to make sure that this process happened lickety-split and people would be in sooner rather than later. And Trump kept trying to press her on dates. She said, just trust me, this is going to happen very quickly. The president gets on the plane, leaves town, and Karen Bass drops a bomb on us saying that it's going to take about 5 years before people can rebuild and move back into their homes. What do you make of all of that?
I think the entire situation is devastating. And right before joining your show, I was on the phone with a friend who lost his home in the Eaton fire, which is a little bit different than the Palisades fire. They're dealing with a little bit of different government entities, and it seems to actually be going a little bit quicker with the Eaton fire than it is with the Palisades. It's gross incompetence on display. People like Karen Bass are career politicians who do not understand how to not be inefficient. That's a lot of triple, quadruple negatives there. But her entire existence has been, being part of this very inefficient bureaucracy, and that's all she knows. That's why she blamed other people for not telling her not to leave town instead of taking responsibility for flying to Ghana when she knew that there was a very, very significant fire risk. I think the only way to accelerate this process would be to put a private person in charge of the response and get rid of all of the government interference and regulations. I don't see that happening. But now it's spinning out. I was just talking to some people who live in Topanga, and apparently they've shut the roads down. They shut down Topanga Canyon indefinitely. So the people who live in Topanga are now having to drive 2 hours plus to get to Santa Monica. And so it's so difficult and impossible for people to just live peacefully in Los Angeles because of gross government incompetence, and it's devastatingly sad.
Right now in Washington, a lot of focus is on Doge and Elon Musk and trying to make government more modern, more efficient, and try to cut out the waste, fraud, and abuse that slows many things down. You mentioned the bureaucracies and the administrations here in Los Angeles that prevent people from being able to rebuild in any sort of reasonable amount of time. I think in a weird sort of way, when she mentioned 5 years, if all of the cylinders are clicking with all of these big, clunky, bureaucratic organizations, that may be them moving as fast as they can go. And it really highlights how much we need a Doge here in California, whether it is the city of Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles, the state of California, because if that is the peak of their abilities, that's just not good enough. And they need to fundamentally change the way they do business.
Well, yes, and also the Palisades should be its own incorporated city. This whole concept of the county of Los Angeles having over 10 million people within its domain is absolutely insane. The next largest county, I think, is half the size, Cook County, Illinois. So the county needs to be broken up. The city of Los Angeles needs to be broken up. Places like the Palisades, Topanga, all of these places should be individually incorporated cities. And I think if that were to happen, this rebuilding process would be much quicker because you're not dealing with this gigantic, insane, inefficient bureaucracy. I mean, the city of LA spans all the way down to the harbor, all the way up to the valley. It's obscene and it doesn't function anymore. It's too big to function.
You mentioned that Topanga Canyon is shut down indefinitely and how much of a pain in the keister that is for those who live there who are trying to get to places like Santa Monica. I spoke with some people in Malibu who talked to LAPD officers who are determining who can go in and who can go out of the Palisades. PCH, of course, is shut down as well. And these officers told my sources that PCH could be shut down for as long as 2 years. If you're living in Malibu, that is going to isolate you from everything. That means it's not going to be easy to get to the airport. If you have an office in Santa Monica or Venice, it's going to take you over 2 hours to get to that office, even though mileage-wise, you're not that far away. If you have any business at all, a doctor's appointment in Century City, whatever the case may be, you are now essentially living on an island because that highway is shut down. Why do you think it is that the Malibu City Council, which is its own independent municipality, why haven't they gone to war with Los Angeles or the county or anyone and everyone who's keeping that highway shut down?
I really sincerely hope that they're doing that behind the scenes. If they're not, I can't imagine just sitting back and allowing that to happen to my city. But, if we're talking about a blue city with a bunch of Democrat electeds, they don't like to step on each other's toes. Even if it hurts their own constituents, they will never stick up and put their neck out if it's going to ruin their chances of advancing upwards in the Democratic Party.
Let's just say, though, because right now I mentioned going to the airport or going to an office or going to a doctor's appointment. Let's say there's a bad car accident because Malibu has some windy roads. Some of those roads aren't lit well at night. You have some issues going on up there that are going to result in some accidents. If you need to go to a trauma center, you need to go to a hospital that's more than whatever the urgent cares have to offer in Malibu, and it now takes you 2.5 hours to get to a trauma center in another part of Los Angeles, people could, in theory, die because that highway is shut down.
That is terrifying. I mean, I can't imagine what it would be like to live out there right now. And why do they have to keep these roads shut indefinitely? Is there nothing that they can do to open up access?
I don't get it. I don't understand. I mean, even if you're on the freeway and there's some horrific accident, they have one lane that's open. It may be moving slowly. It may be something that requires the CHP to be there to assist different cars getting through the affected area. But they, generally speaking, move heaven and earth to try to find a way to keep something open. But it seems like now they're just more than happy to just keep everything shut down indefinitely.
Does Sean Duffy have jurisdiction over this at all? That might be a helpful person to have come out here.
Yeah, I mean, if he has any jurisdiction at all, leaning on them may be a good thing to do. And how about Gavin Newsom? Because if PCH is a state highway, that's something in theory that the state has something to say about. Why not Gavin Newsom have him show up and lean on these locals to get it open?
Oh, God. I mean, you're right. But I don't, he was down here for about a month, jumping around from photo op to photo op and trying to look like he was helpful and look like he was doing things. And I think, frankly, he's the most unhelpful person in the state. But he does have the power to fix some of this. I just don't want him coming back down here. Stay up in NorCal, please.
You mentioned that politically they all come from the same Democratic political machine, and they get punished if they speak out against one another because, in theory, they're all supposed to be on the same page. What we've learned from private text messages that have been made public in the Los Angeles Times is that even though everything is fine and cheery on the surface, there has been a lot of fighting going on behind the scenes, including between LA County Supervisor Lindsay Horvath, who represents the Pacific Palisades, and LA Mayor Karen Bass. Yet when they appear together in public, they're congratulating each other for leadership and patting each other on the back. At what point do you think we get to where that behind-the-scenes backbiting turns into public criticism? Do you think we'll ever get to that point?
I think if someone decides that they're not going to run for elected office again, or they're not going to seek advancement within the party, then they will start talking. Then they will grow a spine. But as long as these people are interested in political careers and political longevity, they're not going to have a public fight, in my opinion. I mean, we had Joe Biden, who was a frickin' vegetable, running the country for years, and people all knew that he couldn't function. He was mentally incompetent. But nobody would say anything publicly because they wanted to preserve their own political power and their own advancement. So unfortunately, I don't expect any of these people to do the right thing and to inform the public in the way that we should be informed. The only way we're going to see that is if somebody gives up on their future political career.
Well, what's interesting, and the wild card in this whole scenario might actually be Gavin Newsom, because at this point, Gavin Newsom has gone as far as he can go in California politics. He's termed out as governor. Neither one of the U.S. Senate seats is going to be open anytime soon. If he wants to continue in politics, he's going to have to run for president and get elected there, be appointed to be vice president on someone's ticket, or get appointed to a cabinet position in a Democratic administration. In any of those scenarios, his audience is going to be much broader and further to the right than the audience here in the state of California, which means having any association with Karen Bass at this point is a political liability for him, which is probably one of the reasons that when he comes down here, he's always in Altadena, where he gets to get photographed with Catherine Barger, and he's not with Karen Bass. He does not want any photographs of him at the scene of the fires with Karen Bass. But at a certain point, as her popularity continues to plummet, it would benefit him politically to create public separation between him and her, because if your audience is no longer California, but your audience is North Carolina and Georgia and Pennsylvania and Arizona and Nevada, it would benefit him to be publicly critical of her, especially if people are trying to figure out where to assign the blame and you're one of the potential targets. Do you think in a weird sort of way he may be the one that breaks bad first?
If he wants to be the hero, then tomorrow or today, he should publicly demand her resignation. He should publicly demand the resignation of Mayor Karen Bass. And I think tomorrow at 10 o'clock, the LA City Council is reviewing Chief Crowley's appeal of Bass's termination of her as fire chief. So maybe that timing is perfect, and Gavin Newsom can be the hero and blame everything on Karen and make her resign.
As an attorney, what kind of case do you think the chief has? Because the mayor has made allegations that are provably false, including that the chief never made public that the winds that were going to be experienced in Southern California were threatening and could potentially lead to fire risk. We know that the fire department did issue any number of public statements saying exactly that. We know that they met privately with the mayor's staff. We know that they were active on social media trying to get word out that the wind was coming. Yet the mayor claims that the fire chief did not do that and that she was deeply disappointed in the fire chief for failing to warn everyone that the wind was coming. She also said that the fire chief did not adequately staff her agency when she knew the wind was coming, but we now know that she did it as best she could, but she didn't have things like working fire engines because of the budget cuts that the mayor imposed on the fire department, so they didn't have the mechanics to fix the truck so they could put them in position in the Palisades. Do you think she has a lawsuit against the city if the council doesn't reinstate her?
Absolutely. I don't have the evidence in front of me, so I'm not going to make any definitive statements, but I believe there's a strong case. There seems to be a lot of defamation and retaliation on the part of the mayor. And I remember, I think it was within a couple of days of the fire, I think it was Alex Michelson who interviewed Chief Crowley. And then there were rumors that Karen Bass canned her right after that interview. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Like shortly after. And then there were all these denials that came out of the mayor's office. Oh, no, we didn't fire her. And then I think they did. I think that they told her, we're going to let you go. Oh, but now we have to cover because it looks really retaliatory because we did it right after you did this interview where you blamed us and you said that there was no water in the fire hydrants. And so then, okay, a month or two later, we have Karen Bass actually terminating her as fire chief. And I think that she was holding on to that from that Alex Michelson interview. And so it's very much retaliatory. It's pretty obvious. It's just, the whole thing about the reservoirs, the fire department should be able to rely on functioning fire hydrants. Like, they should not have to worry that there's a possibility that when they get to the scene of a fire with all of their equipment, that the equipment's not going to function. That's so insane to me. And, it's something that we're still dealing with up and down the state. In my own town, the Palos Verdes Reservoir is empty. And I've been trying to talk to my assemblyman, Al Maritsucci, who's now seeking state office as the state superintendent. He won't respond to me. So I've asked him multiple times, what's going on with this empty reservoir? Why do we have an empty reservoir in Palos Verdes, which is very similar topographically to the Palisades? There's no response. And then I get all this long-winded explanation about water resilience from Cal Water. Something bizarre is going on. Our government is not functioning. They're not responding to constituent needs. And it's very simple. Like, let's allocate our resources to public safety. Let's have functioning reservoirs. Let's have functioning fire hydrants. It's not that difficult, but we just have completely corrupt, incompetent people running our government.
Julie Hamill, attorney with the California Justice Center. You can get her on X at Hamill_law. Julie, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thanks for having me.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, now that we've hit the halfway point of today's show, if you want to keep listening to us after we sign off at 3, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is go to KABC.com, click on podcasts, go to the Apple Podcast app, iHeart, Spotify, search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You can download all the episodes. You can do a Google on the YouTube or get that handy-dandy KABC app. Search KABC AM in the Apple App Store, the Android Store. It's the easiest way to listen live to this radio station and download all the podcasts where you can listen to all our drops like last hour's Ed Lasko's Gem.
He is back, he is naked, and he's on the attack.
On a regular basis, we play for you clips of the insanity that goes on at the LA City Council meetings. You would think, given all of the swearing and all of the singing and all of the insanity that goes on at those meetings, everyone would be paying attention, eyes wide open. But Randy, that's not always the case.
No, it's not, especially for a brand new member of the LA City Council, the woman who replaced Kevin De Leon, Isabel Urado, because she fell asleep during a committee meeting. For more, here's ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
An LA council member appears to have dozed off inside council chambers. Eyewitness News obtained a photograph of...
That's a $220,000 a year nap.
It explains so much, though, doesn't it?
An LA council member appears to have dozed off inside council chambers. Eyewitness News obtained a photo...
You can't even accuse her of burnout. She's been on the job for 2 months.
She showed up tired.
An LA council member appears to have dozed off inside council chambers. Eyewitness News obtained a photograph of Isabel Jurado during a closed session of the council. The public was not inside the chamber at the time. And as you can see, it appears to show her asleep behind the dais, her head being supported by her left hand. So we asked Jurado about the photo that's been circulating on social media.
I'm aware of that photo. It looks like I was reading.
No, it doesn't.
No, Biden tried this too. When he would fall asleep at meetings, I was in deep thought was always the answer.
She was not reading. As far as I am aware, you cannot read with your eyes closed.
Well, Tyler Henry can.
I'm aware of that photo. It looks like I was reading. And if indeed I did doze off, I think this won't be the first or last of the human moments that I have.
It was a human moment.
Oh, yeah, sleeping on the job. Boy, she'd be a great airline pilot, wouldn't she?
As a council member.
Jurado adds, despite what the photo shows, she is committed to serving the constituents of District 14.
No, she's not.
You get the government you deserve.
I mean, it was between her and Kevin De Leon, but still.
Quite frankly.
Now, these are the people, awake or asleep, who get to decide the fate of the fire chief, who we mentioned before in the interview with Julie Hamill. The fire chief who was fired by the mayor, or I guess I should say demoted by the mayor, for what the mayor says is an inadequate response to the fire and for failing to tell her that the wind was a-coming.
Kristen Crowley is appealing that decision of Karen Bass to fire her. And originally, Marquise Harris Dawson tried to schedule the hearing at 5 o'clock on a Friday at Van Nuys City Hall.
And he doesn't seem to care what kind of bad look that is.
Oh, they don't care at all anymore. Let's not forget, it was Marquise who went on with Alex and Marla last week, bragging that he told Karen Bass to fire her because he didn't like the fact that she badmouthed Karen Bass about the budget to Gina Silva.
He also falsely claimed that he never got a warning about the wind, and we know that that is not true.
So the fire union cried foul on the 5 o'clock Friday emergency meeting, and that meeting got pushed to tomorrow morning. For more on the appeal, here's K-Cal.
Former LA Fire Chief Kristen Crowley is appealing her demotion after Mayor Karen Bass removed her just less than a week ago.
I love what's going on here because I don't actually think there's going to be 10 votes to reverse that decision. I don't think there's enough brave members of the city council to go up against Karen Bass. But there's going to be some dirty laundry aired in that meeting. Kristen Crowley might bring receipts. She might have some documentation, and she is going to make the mayor look like a buffoon.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, if she does get the 10 votes, that doesn't mean she's reinstated. It means the mayor has to reconsider her decision, correct?
That is correct. Either way, Karen Bass is going to look like a giant jackass, and I know that rhymed.
And KCAL News reporter Luz Delia Caballero is live in downtown L.A. with the high-stakes hearing and the ousted chief.
Hey, look at that. There's some alliteration for you.
And look at her pronouncing those Spanish names.
With the high-stakes hearing and the ousted chief trying to get her job back. Luz Delia.
This is purely a vengeance hearing, and that's why Marquise wanted to hide it at 5 o'clock on a Friday in Van Nuys.
It's not hard to make Karen Bass look like a buffoon, but that's exactly what's going to happen tomorrow.
Pat, that's right. You know, this rift between Mayor Karen Bass and former LAFD chief Kristen Crowley has been going on for quite some time.
I need somebody to blame because I got on that plane knowing the danger.
It's the fire chief's fault until my numbers take another hit, and then it's Steve Soberoff's fault.
What was the other one last week? Oh, the National Weather Service never invited us to the briefings, except they did.
It's Sam Champion's fault.
And at this point, it's safe to say that will continue. But question now is, well, does Crowley have enough votes to get her job back?
She has 2. She needs 10.
I think she'll get Lee as well.
It's been nearly 2 months since the deadly Palisades fire broke out. And less than a week ago,
I just met with Chief Crowley and removed her as fire chief.
Mayor Karen Bass removed Kristen Crowley as chief, saying she should have had more firefighters out there at the beginning of the Palisades fire, adding Crowley would not cooperate with the after-action report.
The after-action report, which was a fall-on-the-sword report.
And imagine if she staffed the agency with a bunch of firefighters but no trucks to put them in because they weren't operational. What kind of criticism she would have got for that?
Acting in the best interest of Los Angeles public safety.
And now Crowley is pushing back, appealing to city council to get her job back. With just 2 sentences on this email we've obtained, Crowley is signaling she's not giving up her job without a fight.
I don't recall seeing something like this in Los Angeles politics. This is certainly going to be a showdown.
Sarah Sadwani, a politics professor at Pomona College, says under the city charter, 2/3 of the council can vote to override the removal.
That would mean 10 out of...
She's not going to get Hugo because Hugo, for some reason, was at the press conference when Karen Bass fired her.
No, she'll have the socialist bloc behind her. She will also have Marquise Harris Dawson, who for whatever reason wants to become her best friend. Katie Yaroslavsky is pretty predictably bad. Who am I missing here?
Yeah, that's most of them.
The one who can't do math. She'll vote with the mayor.
Oh, Heather Hutt? Yeah. Because you got to remember, now she was elected, but originally she was appointed in that whole crooked scheme to replace Mark Ridley Thomas, except for then he sued to get his pay, even though he wasn't serving, and so he had to pay double. And that was after they originally tried to replace him with Herb Wesson, who actually couldn't serve again because he was termed out. And by the way, Herb Wesson, they just declared a bunch of steps at City Hall to.
He's a man of the hour.
That would mean 10 out of 15 members would need to vote in support of the fire chief. And at this point, it doesn't look likely that that would happen.
At least 2 city council members have been vocal in support of former Chief Crowley, but she's going to need more to be reinstated.
And notably, even just today, Councilwoman Imelda Padilla had received the appointment to the Metro Board.
Gee, I wonder why Imelda got that gig.
Well, she's right on top of all the street pavements.
Street pavements that are cooler.
Hey, Imelda, if you go my way and throw the chief under the bus, I'll put you in charge of the buses.
The neighborhood kids, the down-ass kids don't like it.
Sounds like the mayor found a taker.
Interesting timing, and we'll have to see if that was a way for the mayor to shore up support.
When asked about Crowley's decision...
Boy, every aspect of everything that has happened since the fire started, nothing that has happened has made Karen Bass look good.
No. And by the way, that's for a good reason. She has screwed this up from the moment it started. Actually, she screwed it up from before it started because that's when she decided to get on the plane and go to Africa instead of sticking around because of the wind and the fire threat.
When asked...
Well, and you want to go before that, she bankrupted the city with her nonsensical inside safe, let's put all the crackheads in hotel rooms and pay for them at market rate, and then the city was broke, and so the city had to cut the fire department's budget.
Every impulse she has is wrong.
When asked about Crowley's decision, a Bass spokesperson said former Chief Crowley has the right to appeal her dismissal.
Well, certainly we're going to see City Council will be required to take this up, at least to look at it and to make a vote on it.
Adding the political showdown.
How bad is it going to look if they vote to not even let her speak and make her case?
Well, if you're Chief Crowley and you know going into it that you don't have the votes, you're doing it because you want to indict the mayor for complete incompetence in a public forum. So that's the reason for holding this vote. Everyone knows it, which is why they're doing everything they can to make sure that no one sees it.
Adding the political showdown will continue until a decision is made.
So it is an interesting sort of play between these two, and it's a question of how much political capital does Karen Bass ultimately have, and will this affect her come election time?
I would think so. How much capital could she have left? She's been abandoned by Gavin Newsom. We know that.
Well, the polls say that if the election were held today, she would lose to Rick Caruso.
And initially, City Council said they were all set to consider Crowley's appeal in Van Nuys City Hall at 5 p.m. tomorrow. That has since been canceled. The very latest coming into our...
That is so L.A. City shady.
And, of course, they're not being excoriated by the L.A. Times or any of the other big news outlets in town, public radio, KNX.
Coming into our newsroom now is saying that canceled meeting has now been rescheduled to next Tuesday at 10 a.m. at Van Nuys City Hall. Reporting live from...
Why at Van Nuys?
Because you know that a certain number of members of the council won't fight the traffic to go into Van Nuys on a Friday afternoon.
Not even just the members of the council, members of the public. Do you think my Chinese karaoke hooker man is going to get a bus and go all the way up to Van Nuys to talk about Figueroa?
Well, maybe the point is if they don't have a quorum, then they'd cancel it right then and there. They'd force everyone to drive out to the Valley on a Friday night, and then if they don't have a quorum, then they'd have to cancel it.
You ever been around that area outside of Van Nuys City Hall in the beautiful neighborhood of Van Nuys?
No.
Every single storefront across from City Hall is a bail bondsman.
Sounds like a great part of town.
Reporting live from downtown L.A., Luz Delia Caballero, KCAL News.
Thanks so much, Luz Delia.
We'll see what happens tomorrow.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, you're monitoring the mailbag.
Nicholas writes in at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com and says, I love when people use the excuse it was a human moment, referring to Isabel Urado falling asleep at LA City Hall. Imagine saying that to a cop the next time you get pulled over. No, I'm not sorry, it won't happen again. Not is everyone okay, that pileup I just caused. Well, officer, it was a human moment. It's not the first. It will likely happen again. So forgive me completely.
Well, that's a way to explain away falling asleep at the wheel. Well, Randy, you and I have spent a lot of time on this program talking about a lot of the problems that plague the city of San Francisco. But the problem we're going to address next hour is a new one, even to us.
It's a familiar stench if you've ever been around San Francisco, and we've got a great investigative report into the San Francisco pee problem.
Uh-oh. That story coming up right here on The John Phillips Show. Talk Radio 790 KABC.